Hey, thank you for joining us here on First Coast News Plus. If you've been tuning in to our First Coast News at noon, you saw that there was a press conference involving that viral video released from William McNeil Jr., 22-year-old, who was pulled over February 19th, and it has sparked a lot of controversy here in the area. He was pulled over, and they were saying because he wasn't running his headlights, windshield wipers during inclement weather. I want to bring in Ken Jefferson. He is our crime and safety analyst because, you know, a lot of these lawyers were saying they have some new evidence that came about in this case. So we're taking a look at a specific image that they brought to our attention during this press conference today. And we're talking about attorneys including civil rights attorney Ben Crump and Harry Daniels. Here's a look at that video, Ken, and we kind of want to walk through this a little bit because if you look closely, some people might not quite understand what we're looking at. So explain what we're seeing in this picture here.
So from this particular frame, it appears that that officer may be holding a weapon, his service weapon. It's kind of hard to tell because it's not 100% clear, but that's what the attorneys wanted to bring out today with their press conference. Now this action clearly does not necessarily violate a policy of GSO. But it is of concern of the attorneys, and they'll do what they need to do to argue whatever point they're going to make with this officer holding a gun, if in fact he is holding a gun.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. We are talking about a surveillance video that we've received from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office from the different perspectives of the different officers involved in this traffic stop. So they say they're pulling him over because he's not running his windshield wipers in inclement weather. He gets pulled over, says he can't roll his window down, and ask for a supervisor. It then turns into them bashing the window in. He gets punched in the face, and that's what a lot of people are saying is probably the wrong move here.
Yeah, initially they say that he didn't have his headlights on in inclement weather, and you're required to have them on if it's raining. And when he's pulled over and he asks why he's pulled over, the officer tells him, you don't have your headlights on. It's inclement weather. And McNeil says, it's not raining. I don't need to have my headlights on. So then the officer asked for his driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. Clearly McNeil disagreed with the stop. He wanted to discuss it. He asked for a supervisor. Supervisor could come, but he's not going to override the officer unless the officer is wrong in that case. So, but he wanted a supervisor. And when he did not give up his registration, proof of insurance, to the officer, he slammed his door and locked it as the officer walked closely. And at that point, the officer calls for backup. As you can see, there are several officers there to call for backup. And the officer also tells one of the officers, when you come, make sure you park in front of his vehicle so as to not give him an opportunity to run away and get into a high-speed chase. So he's not cooperating. He's locked himself up. He's actually barricaded himself into his car, and he's talking to another officer on the passenger side. The window is partially cracked, and he's talking to the officer. He's telling him that the officer said that he was driving without his headlights on, and he wanted to see the law. Can you show me that law? The officer says, well, I'll show you the law once you get out of the car. And he says, I want a supervisor. And at that point, the officer that he's talking to on the passenger side tells the other officer on the driver's side, go ahead and crack the window, do it. He cracks the window. As he cracks the window, McNeil just sits there. He's not being violent, he's not aggressive, he's not doing anything, but sitting there. And then comes a punch after the window is punched out. Why? Why was there a punch?
So that's the issue here, the escalation.
Well, the officer escalated that with that punch, in my opinion. The punch, in my opinion, was not necessary. He wasn't doing anything but sitting there. The officers were close enough where they could see his hands. He wasn't reaching for anything. He wasn't trying to do anything. There's a punch right there, as you can see. The officer is right there in the window, so he sees his hands. He knows what's going on. Then you got another officer behind him, and then they take him out of the car, and they're saying that he's resisting. Well, your body's going to tense up when you're grabbed and being thrown to the ground. Your immediate instinct is to break your fall. So your hands are not going to be behind your back when you hit the ground because your face will hit the ground. So the natural instinct is to brace yourself for a fall, and he wasn't getting his hands behind him quick enough, so they were aggressive with him to do that. Sometimes you have to be aggressive once the person is on the ground to get the hands behind their backs. And so with the information that Attorney Crump has revealed today shows a different perspective of the nature of how these officers handled this call.
And we do want to mention, Sheriff T.K. Waters did mention that there is an internal investigation going on in this case, and Officer Bowers, which is the one that you see punching McNeil Jr., is on leave pending this internal investigation. But the state attorney's office says no criminal action. They didn't see any criminal action from those officers in this case. Yeah,
based on what they looked at, which was the BWC as well as the cell phone video, the state attorney decided that there's nothing criminal that's going on here. They felt that that punch was not criminal. Obviously, they felt that that punch was in the course of the police officer's duty, and then they turn it over to the sheriff's office to internally investigate it. And what they're going to be looking at is the policies, rules, and procedures, the standard operating procedures, as well as their general orders. Did the officer violate any of those policies, or any officer that was on that scene? Did any of them violate it? They're going to look at did they use enough force that was necessary to take him out of the car, or was it excessive force that was used? You've got, that I can see, about 5 officers there on that one traffic stop, and they all played a part in some kind of way. So they're going to have to interview and talk to every single officer that was there. They're going to have to write out, put a synopsis on what their actions were while they were there, and so on.
And as we continue to get a look at these different angles of the video, we have the cell phone video from inside the car. We have the body-worn cam video from many of the different officers on scene. We want to kind of focus in on one of the photos that, Attorney Crump had mentioned during the press conference today. If you guys can pull up the one with the officer, they say pulling a gun during this traffic stop. Can you kind of run us through this? Because I know at first glance, some folks might think that the barrel is right here.
No, that's not a barrel. That's a backdrop. Looks like a fence of some sort. If you concentrate on this area here, where his hand is, his hand is up almost to his chest, to his chin, actually, and it appears that he may be holding a weapon this way. Well, when you're taught in the academy, you don't hold a weapon that way. You hold a weapon, you brace it with your weak hand, and you hold it with your strong hand, and you keep your index finger extended outside of the trigger guard until you're ready to use it. When you're ready to use it, you just slip it in the trigger guard and you pull the trigger. But this is somewhat distorted, so I can't affirmatively say that he's holding a weapon, but I can't find any other reason why he would be doing this or have his hands up when the person has a windshield there in front of him and he's in the car. If some might say, well, it may be a taser, but that doesn't make any sense because a taser is not going to penetrate glass. So it appears that he may be holding a gun based on this video and what Attorney Crump said.
And this is something that wasn't part of the report initially, that a gun was potentially
not
pulled.
in the arrest and booking report.
Okay.
This officer is going to have to write what we call a supplement report to explain what he did and why he did it. So those reports are not immediately available. The arrest and booking report is the only report that's immediately available. So when it's all over with, when the investigation is concluded, you're going to have, of course, your arrest and booking report, which we have now.
Okay.
And then you're going to have your internal affairs report that concludes the investigation. And then you're going to have all of the supplemental reports that all the officers, every officer there has to write a report, what they did, what time they got there, what they did, and why. And that's not available right now. This will shed light on whether or not that was a weapon or not. We'll know for sure at that particular time. But at this point, because of the distortion, it's hard to really say affirmatively that he is holding a gun. But it is questionable as to why he has his hand up like that.
All of this 5 months after the initial traffic stop, February 19th. And I wanted to ask you these questions, Ken, because you have experience in this, not only, in law enforcement, but training and, certification for gun holders. Tell me a little bit about your experience there.
Well, I had the opportunity to serve as an academy staff instructor with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office for a number of years. And one of the things that we teach, firearms, driving, first responder, and defensive tactics. All those things are separate and individually, but they're all taught. A certain amount of hours has to be done. So when it comes to weapons, when it comes to force, those things are carefully explained. And once you get on the road and you're out of the academy, you graduate, you pass your state exams, you're now placed with a FTO or field training officer. And for 12 weeks, you ride with a different officer in different areas, learning the trade, if you will, and experiencing what's going on. And then the last 2 weeks of your training, you go with your original training officer, but you're a solo officer. He's there, he or she is there in the car, but you're operating as a solo officer, kind of like when you get your pilot's license. You know, you have to do solo flights, but the trainer is still there. So, and so all of those things that they've learned in the academy and learned on the street those 3 months are measured those last 2 weeks. So they're taught when you pull a weapon out, you have, you know, if you feel that you have to use your weapon, you pull it out and you use your weapon. It's deadly force. Mm-hmm. And that's the last resort of everything. But there's a paradigm that you go through before you finally use excessive force. You know, you've got your command presence, you got your voice inflection.
And even in the video you see, you know, from the cell phone video, I don't know at what point McNeil Jr. is doing this, but his hands are up. And you said that's important as an officer, that you're paying attention to somebody's hands when you're making a traffic stop.
Well, one of the main things that we teach is that you always watch the hands. Even if you get out of the car and you got your hands in your pocket, you may not have anything in there but some loose change. But officers are not comfortable with your hands in the pocket because you can have a small .22 weapon in your pocket and pull it out and shoot the officer. So officers are always trained to keep their eyes on their hands, whether the person is standing, whether the person is sitting, whether they're near or far. You keep your eyes on the hands. In this case, you see several officers close enough to see his hands the whole time. You can even see the bill of the cap of this individual where his hands are. He's constantly pulling his hands up, but even before he was pulling his hands up, they're close enough to see his hands, to see if he makes any type of overt gestures or any kind of moves that might endanger them. Mm-hmm. So they're taught, always watch the hands.
And what about the proximity? We talked a little bit about that, the officer's proximity to, you know, the vehicle during this traffic stop.
So when you walk up to a car or a vehicle on a traffic stop, you're walking parallel with the car, but close to the car, so you can see if there's anything in it. You also notice when officers pull a car over before they get to the driver's door, they always touch the trunk. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
They touch the trunk. Well, they're seeing if it's ajar. If it's ajar, somebody can pop out of there and shoot the officer. So that's a safety thing that's done there. So they'll tap the trunk or see if it's ajar. And then they're looking in the passenger seat, but always keeping their eye on that driver to see what's going on. And when they walk up to them, the first thing they're going to do is look at their hands. If, you know, see if they have a hand hidden, or if it's in their lap, or on the steering wheel, or whatever. If it's in the 10 and 2 position, they're trained to do that. When they ask for the license, registration, proof of insurance, most people carry it in the glove compartment. So as they open the glove compartment, those eyes are focused on their hands as they go in the glove compartment and get out the documents that they do. So they have to look at the hands always.
And the calmness. I mean, look at what's going on once things start to escalate, the window gets broken, the punch is done. He seems very calm in this situation. You know, what's going through your mind as you're watching this again, knowing what you know with all the different angles of just his reaction to all of this?
He appears to be calm, but upset or hurt at the same time that this is happening. He figured, in my opinion, he's thinking, all I wanted was a supervisor, and I'm going through all of this. So it's not normal, if you will, for someone to go through something like this and remain as calm as he did. I mean, he remained calm the entire time. All of this would have easily been avoided had he handed over his license, registration, and proof of insurance when he was asked for it. The only reason he didn't do it is because he didn't agree with the stop.
Do we have the right to ask for a supervisor?
You can ask for a supervisor.
Okay.
You can ask for a supervisor, but more than likely an officer is not going to stop his actions on that traffic stop immediately to get a supervisor for you, so that the supervisor won't say, well, what have you done? All I did was stop him. He asked for you. No, you continue your duties. And some would say, well, what was the rush? Why didn't you just call the supervisor? Well, I believe a supervisor did show up. Mm-hmm. But of course, the actions is still going on as well. But had he told the officer that his window was broken, that's why he opened the door and talked to the officer. His mistake was he slammed the door and locked it and barricaded himself inside, as opposed to, even if he did that, crack your window, give them the information that they're asking for, and let the traffic stop continue. You don't have to have your window all the way down.
Okay.
Hand it out to the officer. You can talk to y'all. You all can converse through the crack window. Let all that happen. We wouldn't have all this.
And another thing I noticed watching the video and the different perspectives we have from the different body cam videos, there was an initial cruiser that came to the back, and then when they called for backup, there was another one that kind of barricaded him front and back. Is that typical during a traffic stop like this?
The first police car that you're talking about was the officer that stopped him, that was behind him. And when he called for backup, he basically said he has a non-compliant subject. When you come, park in front of him so that we won't get into a high-speed chase, because he could drive off and it can get into a high-speed chase. So that was the reason for that. And then many have questioned, well, if it was inclement weather and your headlights needed to be on, why weren't the officers who responded that we saw in the video, why weren't their headlights on?
Right, that was a big topic during all of this. So there were droplets on the windshield. We do want to mention that.
There were droplets on the windshield, so obviously it had been raining. And so the big question is, was it raining when he was stopped? Was it raining during the actual stop? I would say probably not, because when you see the BWC, the officer gets out and there's nothing coming down. There's no rain coming down. So we see droplets of water on his car, on the offender's car, once you get up close. But nobody had their windshield wipers on. Nobody had their headlights on who responded that I saw. And I only saw the one car come up. Well, maybe two cars come up, but neither of them had lights on or windshield wipers.
And that's interesting, because a part of traffic law, officers don't have to have their lights on if they're, going in a pursuit or, going to a call. So I think that's going to be a big argument here between, McNeil Jr.'s lawyers and
that
JSO.
was just comments from people who don't know the law. They're looking for different things to say about this particular individual. This video has garnered a whole lot of attention nationwide, of course. Everybody's got an opinion about it. You've heard national talk shows, you've heard people on podcasts. They're all giving their opinions, and they're all different. The opinions are all different. Some of them are upset with the way the sheriff handled the press conferences, though they thought that, well, wait a minute, you hadn't conducted an investigation, but you're defending what your officers did and this, that. They're saying all these things. We have to let the investigation play out. We have to see what's going on with that.
And how long could that take? Well, at this point,
there's no time limit on it. There's no limit that says we will be done with this in 2 days, in 3 days, whatever, because they've got to thoroughly talk to every officer. If there were any witnesses around in that area at the time, they got to go out there and see if there were any witnesses to anything that they may be missing. It might be a witness that was with him prior to this stop or whatever. It takes time, and the public has to understand that for a thorough investigation to go on, you have to be patient. But in their minds, the longer it takes, they figure they're cooking the books, and that's not the case. That's not the case, because they're held to a standard that when they investigate, do investigations like this, they can be audited to see how that investigation was conducted, and if it was not conducted properly, then they'll be in trouble with the federal government. So they don't want to have that to happen. So they're going to make sure that it's investigated thoroughly and properly, and hold those accountable for their actions. If their actions were good, you give them praise. If they weren't, then you discipline them. So the officer could face demotion, suspension, or termination. One of the three.
And it could take some time.
It could take some time. It could take some time. But because this has gotten so much attention, I believe that the process may be slightly expedited.
I think that's key here. If you're just now joining us here on First Coast News Plus, this is a special report. We just earlier this morning got another press conference from civil rights attorney Ben Crump regarding that viral video about that JSO traffic stop that happened back in February. I'm here joined by our crime and safety analyst, Ken Jefferson, with a lot of experience with all of this. One of the key things that Crump brought up during that press conference, and I want to see if we can bring that photo, was new evidence that they got showing an officer potentially holding a weapon. And if you can just walk us a little bit through this for those just now joining us here on First Coast News Plus, what we're looking at and what issue this could have caused during the traffic stop.
Well, based on Attorney Crump's press conference that he wanted to introduce to the public, as well as the sheriff's office, as though the sheriff's office doesn't have the video, but they have the video. What appears to be a gun being held by this particular officer right here. Don't concentrate on this because that's a backdrop of a fence.
Right, we want to make that really clear. This is not the barrel of the gun.
That's not a barrel of a gun. The guns that they carry are not that long.
Okay.
But if you concentrate on this area down here, it appears that he's holding a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
I can't confirm that he is. I can't say for sure that he is. But it'd be kind of awkward doing a traffic stop if he's just standing there like this. You know, we know it's not a taser because a taser can't penetrate the glass, so he's not going to be tased. So more than likely, he possibly has a gun, a weapon drawn. Because he has that weapon drawn in this particular case does not mean that he violated any policies or procedures or whatever, because the officer called for backup, and he said, I have a non-compliant violator, traffic violator, and I need a backup because we're probably going to have to take him out of the car. Mm-hmm. In his mind, he's thinking he's barricaded himself in the car. I don't have any information on him as far as his driver's license, registration, or proof of insurance. I don't have any of that. All I have is his tag number, and I've run that. The vehicle didn't come back stolen, came back to whoever it's registered to. And so he knew that if he didn't come out, they were going to have to extract him from the car. They can perfectly legally smash your window and take you out of a car. They can do that. Now, when we look at this scenario, we've got an individual who wants a supervisor, who is questioning the stop, who does not want to cooperate with the officer by handing over his information. Mm-hmm. Let's just be fair. Let's just be clear. He could have easily handed his information, and he was non-compliant. Let's just face that. When you look at the video, it angers you because of what happened, but it wouldn't have happened had he handed all that over to the individual. So the officer realized that I've got a barricaded suspect. Mm-hmm. He's locked himself in the car. He's not coming out. I need backup. I need help. Backup gets there. Another officer, one of the backup is engaged in conversation on the passenger side.
With the window partly down.
With the window partially down. We see that in the BWC. And he's talking to him, and he said, I want to see that law. That's not the time to argue with an officer about the law. You take your citation. If the officer very well could have just said, I'm going to give you a warning this time. It's a minor offense. Mm-hmm. I want to give you a warning. You don't know. A lot of times that can happen where officer wants to pull you over because you may not know it. You may not know that you need to have your headlights on in inclement weather. But it didn't get that far because he didn't give his information. He wanted to argue about the law at that particular time. So he's talking to the officer on the passenger side, and he's telling the officer what happened leading up to what we see on the video.
Things escalate.
And things escalate from there.
So, this latest press conference, nothing has been filed officially, according to Ben Crump, his attorney, but he's saying they do plan to file a lawsuit. Okay. So what's next? Well,
the sheriff's office is going to conduct the investigation. A lot of times they'll wait for the conclusion of the investigation before they file anything. They want to take a look at everything to see if it jives with their policies, their procedures, and the actions of the officer. And then they'll make their decision as to whether or not they're going to file. So we're really just going to have to wait on what the investigation reveals. All right, we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for joining us. Ken Jefferson, our crime and safety analyst. Of course, you can find all these videos and our articles on this case on firstcoastnews.com. We'll see you back here at 5 o'clock with a little more insight into all of this. And thank you guys for joining us here for this special report.
This has been a First Coast News On Your Side special report. First Coast News is always on. Stream now on First Coast News Plus.